Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. This is Brett Tadlock, TN Artist. Just want to welcome you here. So this is the sped up version of the lesson over on Patreon. And this one is just really kind of a cloudscape lesson. I hadn't done one of those in a little while, and so wanted to go back over how to capture some drama. If you're trying to go for, kind of an impressionistic look or what, and laying in a kind of a broken gradated background to start building the clouds on. And one of the key points of this lesson is talking about trying to work with complementary colors. And so the background is done this bluish purple, and then I start using the opposites of that with the oranges and yellows and building it up there. So just laying in some rough shapes and using the impasto brush that's available through my Gumroad account to then lay in just kind of a weird organic shape, and then taking some of the blue, smearing that across it to get kind of that really interesting grayish blue color. My thought here was to play around with it and maybe get kind of that old world illustration look, like you get from Maxfield Parrish or something like that, where you get really kind of some of those blues and purples. But mainly just talking about how to build it up and using mid-tones to go into dark and then coming back up to lights, and using some of the brushes that are in here and showing how you could take something like my impressionistic cloud brush and use it, and then you can use the everlasting oil to blend it out, and using everything from palette knife to oil brush to the ink tool to the marker, how to really build up some interesting layers and colors and try and capture that feel of like light casting through the cloud and that the way it changes through the cloud to give you that really drama of like an early morning light or a late evening light as the sun is setting, and capturing those yellows and oranges and purples and excuse me, and all those really interesting things. And so that's really what this lesson is talking about. How do you capture that feeling of that drama and build up the different layers and gradations of it all to do so? And so that's really what this is doing right here, is I'm taking it and showing how do you fade it out and capture some of those different colors. And you can keep some of the texture, like for example, if you wanted to have a really thick oily texture, you could keep the textures from the everlasting oil, or you can smooth them out. I chose to smooth them more out on this than anything else, and to get that really soft blend with it, and then using the different brushes and layers to build it up, and not using any overlay or multiply layers for this painting, but instead just talking about how to gradate and blend out and shape it. So and this was just a random made up cloudscape, so it could be, it could be better, it could be worse, but just really the important thing with the lesson is talking about how to capture that feel of light kind of cascading through and around and hitting highlights and so forth with it. So some of the interesting stuff with this. So this is one of many hours of lessons I have with ArtRage and Procreate and Rebelle 5 over on my Patreon page. It's $3 a month for the full lessons, and the lessons are anywhere from 30 minutes to a couple hours each. So there's just hours and hours of content there that you can really dive through and learn how to experiment and play around with these tools. Some really good conversations that we can have there as well. But having said that, know that you can also ask questions here. Whereas I have that over there to kind of help support my artwork and being able to put these things out. I try to give back as much information here as I can as well. So feel free to ask any questions or leave any comments below. Anyway, as you can see here, just trying to build up some of the light and the turbulence of it to give that feel of it really kind of pushing across and doing it. One of the interesting things with clouds that you want to try to avoid is repetition of shapes. I got a little bit of that in this, where some of my clouds had kind of the similar shape and feel. I go back later and kind of break it up a little bit more. But we as humans, we want to have patterns, and so that's why I found myself kind of repeating it. And then as I started adding in highlights and new layers, I went back in and started breaking up some of those shapes and everything else. But even right here, you can see some of these shapes are just repeating themselves a lot. It's kind of given this interesting but weird kind of feel. So like I said, I go back later and get rid of it. But what I wanted to do with this part of it was really kind of capture that feel of the clouds moving up and over and across you, and that atmospheric perspective. So that's what I'm starting to hear, is get that feel of seeing the bottom of the clouds with all the other stuff rising over it. And then I decided to get rid of the bottom stuff here in just a minute, so that way I can put in some mountains off in the distance and kind of get that feel for, you know, the clouds being over them, and just really kind of give some more atmospheric perspective and figure out. I mean, the majority of this is a cloudscape with just some mountains and trees thrown in for accent. One of the nice things with doing mountains, one of the interesting things that you can do is you can take the roller brush like I'm doing here, and with that thick and smooth setting, you can roll in some really nice impressionistic mountains quickly. It's almost like painting with a palette knife. And then you can take the stencil and go back over it and give it some texture later on. But the main thing I did here was talking about how to grab colors from the clouds and the sky to give you that feeling of reflected light and everything else. So, but this is where I start to really kind of break these up a little bit and change some of the shapes and add some clouds in the background. I was wanting to add some really light white highlight clouds off in the distance, and then I started playing around with the transform tool just to kind of give it a little bit of extra movement and stuff, and erased it and used the palette knife to blend it back, and then just again kind of erased it and moved it around to get something that I liked. And then adding in some extra highlights, and then adding in, once I get that done, starting to add in a few silver linings to the clouds as well. So, but yeah, it was a fun little lesson. Hopefully, you know, people got a lot out of it, and hopefully you can get kind of a taste of it here, of how to play around and really enjoy painting clouds. I think going with these orangish, yellowish kind of clouds, and then having like the purple mountains below, to me it's just kind of a fun painting to do and to practice. So you know, consider joining over on Patreon and coming over there and going deep diving on the lessons and asking whatever questions you have, and help support the efforts over there. Like I said, it's only $3 a month, and it has a lot of value in it. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you got something at least out of it. And like I said, if you have any questions at all, just leave them below. More than happy to try and answer them here as well as on Patreon. So I appreciate you, and I'm glad that you're a watch and subscriber. I'm glad that you watch my videos and that you're a subscriber to everything. Hopefully, if you're not, please consider subscribing and make sure to share and comment and all that fun stuff. So enjoy the rest of the video. Thanks for being over here, and just have a fantastic rest of the day.